Welcome back to another episode of the Trees and Lines podcast. Cindy Musick, Senior Director of Vegetation Management Services at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, joins us again. This time, we talk about an update on her PhD progress, tree canopy cover, and tree-caused outages. Have a listen. Hope you enjoy. Welcome, Cindy. Glad you were willing to come back and talk to us again this time.
We didn't scare you off.
I'm so flattered. Flattered to be here.
So, how about a quick refresher for those that weren't here on the first podcast?
Sure. I have been in the utility space about 33 years. I hate saying that out loud, but yeah. And the first 12 years of my experience were at an investor-owned utility in Washington, D.C., and then I took some time off to work on a doctorate, or at least start a doctorate, and raise little boys, and then came back 12 years ago. And I've spent the last 12 years with an electric cooperative, which was a completely different experience. So I've kind of had half of my career in one space and half in the other.
Very good. So you are at West Virginia University doing your PhD program. And I'm intrigued by that because that's where I got my PhD. It's just, I did it a couple of years ago, about 45 years ago, maybe. So do you have an update? How's that going?
It's going good. They are a fantastic group of people to work with. So I'm working with the head of the GIS department, forestry, urban forestry. Dr. Dahl is my committee chair. You've heard me mention several times. People in soil science, people in forest hydrology, and the head of the drone lab at WVU. So we've kind of crafted this project over the years and did some data collection and did a few experiments. And now we're in the writing phase. So basically, it's going to be 3 papers. And the first one's, I'm not going to say in the can, but it's done. And it's about the data we collected about outages and why trees fail, at least in the Mid-Atlantic area where we provided electricity. And REC is kind of in the lab for it. So that's been pretty cool. Second paper is more about mapping the GIS component of it and how we're bringing all of that data into onto our system, if you will, and how that looks and what we learned about that. And then the third is just going to be about different forest ecotypes and ecosystems and how what we found differs from one area to the next. We are across 22 counties, so there's a lot of differences in the terrain, in the topography, in the soil drainage classes, in the types of forests that exist, and density of customers and everything else. So long drawn out answer, but we're working on it and hope to wrap up this December.
So you're looking at tree caused outages, and I believe the study was nationwide, right?
No. So my study was based at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, my employer. It's 22 counties across the middle of Virginia. But Dr. Dahl is actually taking that study nationwide. So he's replicating what we've done at REC and collecting data sets from all across the country. I think he's got 32 out of the 50 states. Utilities have provided their information, and so he's compiling it. And just as a side note, he is still, at least the last time I talked to him about 2 weeks ago, still looking for a grad student and has funding from First Energy for someone to get their PhD looking at that information and analyzing it. So that's pretty exciting.
Are you willing to give us any takeaways yet, or is that secret until it's in the can?
I mean, we are so close to getting this first paper completed, but we're still kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So give it another little bit if you
Okay.
don't.
So Cindy, from the last time we caught up with you, what's been going on at Rappahannock, some of the new stuff that you guys have been involved with. I know you guys recently hosted a pretty big meeting for the UAA, right? I believe regionally. So yeah, give us a little rundown of what you've been up to since we last caught up with you.
Well, the UAA meeting was not a Rappahannock Electric or a Cindy Musick project. It was a group of people that really just pulled it off. We started talking about it in February and
Of this year.
of this year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And
Good for you.
some really interested folks at Right Tree, West Tregalius, and crew got involved and kind of took it and ran with it. And I was kind of behind the scenes. I was part of the planning committee and kind of getting people excited and pulling together a planning committee and helping out with some of the pesky details with sponsors and that kind of thing. And we just had an amazing response for an inaugural meeting. We had almost 100 people showed up. We had sponsorships just over the top. All of my contractor sponsors just jumped in with both feet. We're really excited about everything. And yeah, so it was a fantastic meeting. The agenda, great speakers and a panel. We put together a panel about just looking at different types of technology and how these different industries can work together and some of the things that products that can result as a collaborative effort instead of just everyone working in their silos doing satellite or doing drones or doing technology or whatever. What happens when you pair those things? And we've had some good experiences, and so that was a neat panel. And yeah.
Okay. So a little encourage others around the country that are part of UAA. What's it take to pull that off? A meeting.
You have to generate a lot of interest. You have to kind of sell it to the national UAA, that we have the interest, we have the sponsorships, we have, potentially the attendees. And like with most things in life, you need a champion to make it happen. And, and all of these, meetings and projects and what have you really have to have somebody that's really interested. And I think we've got so many folks in this industry in the Mid-Atlantic area. Just co-ops alone, we had 5 electric cooperatives that showed up. We had, I believe, every investor owned within 50, 60, 100 miles was represented. So just neat to see something like just, it looked like we wiggled our nose and it just happened. But there was a lot of, a lot of things that had to happen leading up to that. And it was very, very exciting and satisfying to sit in that audience and go, wow, 100 people, first time.
Cindy, I know last time we caught up, I walked away obviously really impressed with what you guys as a co-op are doing, right? And the standards that you guys are setting. So, what are some of the things that you've been up to? I mean, you guys have always been very technologically friendly, somewhat forward thinking in that space, obviously governed differently. Maybe catch us up a little bit on, your time with Rappahannock and some of the initiatives that you're driving or things you're preparing for. Even from when we last sat down and chatted, the landscape is rapidly changing. A lot of things that are happening around the country are now more relevant maybe to you today than they may have been even a year ago. Not that they weren't relevant maybe to you specifically, but certainly to stakeholders, constituents, PUCs, whatever the case is. So yeah, give us a little peek into how your world has evolved at Rappa.
Well, I think when we last talked, we had talked about implementing satellite, and we had done a pilot or two, and we had talked about implementing, getting rid of everything paper, paper
Yep.
invoices, paper timesheets, all those things. So all of that is done. And
Congrats.
we are, thank you. And not a
you're
small
like,
project.
you're like, thank you. Yeah. Not a small project.
So it's been very collaborative. We have a great two partners that chose to work together with each other, and I think that's unique. I don't think you see a ton of that where you've got a work management system over here, and you've got different kinds of data over here, and you say, okay, let's smush it together and see what happens. And that's kind of what happened. And I won't say there weren't any hiccups and that it was completely smooth, but it was little pesky details that had to be worked out, and a couple of hiccups, and we came out on the far end of that with a product that when I open it up, I can see where there's trees in decline, and I can see where it's been assigned to a crew, neutralized, and then come back. And that's different. So this morning, coincidentally, I met with my 3 senior foresters, Dave, Ken, and Jacoby, who are great guys. And we're already looking at, we have our 5-year cycle, and then we do a mid-cycle hazard tree inspection. And so we're using our new outage management system, OMA, to pull in data to look at the performance of all these circuits, which isn't new and different. But when you're using that and saying, okay, well, these are the circuits we're gonna get some satellite data on next year, and you're working not independently, not in a silo, but in conjunction with our operations and construction department, who have also pulled in another type of technology over the last couple of years and kind of piggybacked on that mid-cycle work to use drone data to find other things that are wrong with the circuit outside of trees. Trees get lots of blame on and everything, and for good reason. It's still 70% of our outages, and most of those are still live. Nothing's changed there. But so when you go through and you target those that have declines in chlorophyll, and you happen to notice a few more while you're out there, because the satellite data is not perfect, but it definitely puts you in the neighborhood of where there's tree health issues. And it's certainly a good tool to use as a barometer. So when you couple that with, there's also a cracked insulator that the drone found. There's also a pole top that's split. Things that never could have been seen just by a walking inspection before. Now they're being seen by drones. So we got the satellites, we got the drones, we got the work management system. We're pulling in a bunch of mapping GIS data related to the research that we've done. And I think long term, we're figuring it out, and it's trial and error, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's a sight better than we were just a year ago.
I know you work with a group of co-ops there in the region. Are they able to leverage? I'm sure they're not the size and the resources that you have. Any way you're thinking of helping them leverage that?
Yeah, we talk a lot. We do have a Mid-Atlantic Regional Association, so it's Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, all the electric cooperatives, and we do have a vegetation management working group that's pretty active. We meet once a quarter. Last fall, we met in person for the first time in a little bit, and the person at the association, her name is Brandon, that coordinated it, did a heck of a job of just getting a lot of people there, and also we had this idea, well, why don't we get all the new really cool equipment in one place, and all the utility people there at the same time, or, co-op people there. So, and again, our contractor partners just kind of showed up and brought it. And we had everything from kind of like a airboat. It didn't have the bucket mounted on it, but that was kind of neat. We had a drone spraying some water just to demonstrate, no, you don't get a shape like huge when you're spraying with herbicide. Just a bunch of different folks that showed up with different pieces of equipment, and to have all that in one place at the same time, it's an opportunity that most co-ops, the person that's managing trees is managing 3 or 4 other things. They've got safety, or they've got line crews, or they've got, you name it. They wear a bunch of hats. And you're right. I'm really fortunate in that regard. This is all I do. This is all I focus on. But most of our co-ops, they have a lot of responsibilities.
We were talking a little bit offline of what is happening currently in Houston and parts of Texas with Beryl that just kind of came through. I'm obviously personally affected going through that, and obviously Centerpoint is under a ton of scrutiny. Obviously being in the space, have a great deal of empathy for the complexity of the problem. There's a lot that goes into trying to solve it, prepare for it. With everything that's been going on, with the fires outside of California now, with what seems to be a pretty expected volatile storm season, talk to us a little bit about you and your team's preparedness strategy, and have you pivoted? Have you attempted to sort of modify anything given what's been going on across the country?
So I'm not a huge fan of pivoting midstream. I'm a huge fan of staying the course, and if something is being effective and you're kind of chunking away from it bit by bit, no improvements happen overnight, especially when you're on a 5-year cycle. It takes 5 years. And, when you pull these pieces of technology in, well, year 1 is great, but how much gets done the first year? Not that much.
Right.
So, I feel like we're building, and we have been building, and we're going to continue to be building. Does that mean we're completely ignoring the whole fire issue? No, we're not. We did work with our risk management folks to put together a wildfire mitigation plan. I think we were the first cooperative and possibly the first utility in Virginia to do that. We felt like it was necessary, and and we definitely are just looking at things differently.
Right.
You have to. You can't ignore headlines. You can't ignore liability and risk and people. And at the very core of everything we do, we serve our members. And so if something's going to affect them, and certainly fires would, certainly forest health after, what are we on, 2 or 3 weeks in the Northeast of 100-degree temperatures. We had a season similar to this in 2018. And I know the year following, we had thousands of oaks that went into decline and died, and I think it's just, the trees aren't exactly equipped for 100 degrees. Right. Maybe 500 miles south of us, or where you're at, Tej, they are, but they're not here. And it definitely affects them. So, and then in terms of hurricanes, we do tabletop exercises about once a year or so. And so we plan. We plan for chaos. We plan for the big one, the big storm. January, I think it was 5th, 2022, maybe January 3rd. It was the first day back after a big, long holiday break. We had a massive storm, massive. And we had 100,000 members out, and it was, related to ice and snow. So completely opposite of a hurricane, but a big,
Yeah.
big event. And we had 900 and almost 1,000 mutual aid folks, on our system. And it was a learning curve, because we had some new folks. We had people that were working on our system that hadn't worked here before. And so we learned a lot with mapping and with communicating with our members what was going on. We learned about just, again, the pesky details. Somebody's got to do the laundry. Somebody has to make sure people get fed.
Yeah.
And, if you're a Southeastern utility and you get a big storm every 3 to 5 years, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen, but you're a little bit more familiar, with all of those folks, and just getting all that stuff done. And if you're, traditionally we just haven't had a big storm like that, but maybe every 10 years. So we took it as a learning event.
A big conversation, I think, that's already starting to take place based on what just happened here in Texas, and that I think is going to continue to evolve is, what's happening in the broader economy, right? So things are expensive, right, in this inflationary environment, and trying to keep energy costs down. So there's been a lot of pressure on budgets across the utility space to tighten. And then an event like this takes place, and then there's all kinds of finger pointing about like, well, why didn't you do this? And why don't you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And, PUCs that maybe didn't approve a budget because it looked like capital spending was too much or it wasn't enough of a priority. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, why didn't we do that? And so there's going to be this back and forth, and then probably a very reactionary, there'll be a very reactionary response to, okay, well, we got to do a bunch of stuff now, and et cetera, et cetera. So where do you kind of sit on that, in terms of what is the expectation? Are we being short-sighted when we're tightening budgeting? Like, I know it's a complex problem, but I just, I'm watching this trend of gotta save money, but I'm like, at what cost, right? So there's that fine balance, and all of a sudden, a situation like what we just observed that got blown out of the water. So now the entire focus is going to be on capital rebuilding, and there's going to be a lot of back testing and analysis of who should have done what, when they should have done it. So where do you kind of stand on those issues? How do you think the market's going to respond broadly to something like that, state to state?
Yeah, you've had a tough week.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking about it, and growing up in Florida, we had hurricanes every so often, and you live in a boarded up room, and it's kind of awful.
Yeah.
And this is certainly the week for finger pointing, isn't it?
It seems that way. It like Governor Abbott came out and, is kind of being aggressive and attacking, and people there's just all kinds of narratives out there and discussions. And meanwhile, there's crews out there working hard, trying to solve the problem. Like I'm like, people, the organizations are doing the best that they can given the hand. And I think there's the problem, and solving the problem is bigger than just saying it's your fault. Like, there's a lot of stakeholders that drive these decisions. And so I was just curious, A, what you think about that, B, how you think something like this changes the course of budgets, money, capital spending, how it changes maintenance programs. Like, it's not a small thing. And given that the season is expected to be more volatile, like there's going to be more of this, right? We just started.
Right.
So
I've been really fortunate up until recently to not have been affected by tremendous budget cuts. But you do have to make judgment calls, and you have to step back and say, this is what we've been doing, and this is the results. And if we did this, if we just kept throwing money at it, is that going to solve the problem? Or do we need to be smarter about it?
Yeah.
And even if we are smarter about it and we use every piece of intelligence and research and funding just, to the like a scalpel. That's what my CEO says. You used to use it kind of like a hammer, and now you're using it like a scalpel. To a certain extent, we're also, staying in our maintenance program, and but even when you do all that, when you have 150-mile-an-hour winds, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if those poles are 2 years old or they're 50. It really doesn't. Wood poles withstand a lot. I was looking at some research this morning, and they said it was talking about, like, at what point do trees start failing? And it's 50 to 60 miles an hour is North America is pretty much, our trees are going to stay vertical 50 to 60 miles an hour. And except when they're a singular tree, not in a forest, except when they have no root disturbance whatsoever. So, think about when you're building a line and you've got, soil compaction, and you've got, heavy equipment, and just to put the pole in the ground. So basically where I'm going with this is, yes, you have to be really smart about how you use these resources, whether it's your shareholders' resources, whether it's your members' resources.
Yep.
But you also have to be a little bit realistic and say, okay, you know what? If we don't ever want an outage due to a tree, then we can't have trees within falling distance anywhere.
Right.
And, financially, that's just,
it's not viable.
It depends on where you are. It might be a little bit easier in Texas or in Wyoming, maybe, where there's a few less trees, but,
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but.
No, look, it's just, I'm just watching and reading and seeing how this goes. And then I also, having lived through it, I've only been full-time in Houston since the end of 2019, and I haven't experienced winds like that. Now, fortunately, I'm in a fortunate position where I could install a natural gas generator. So I had things in place that could get me through the storm. But when I looked around the city, the carnage, the trees just uprooted, massive infrastructure just flipped on its head. I just couldn't believe. And to your point, there's no perfect solve. I do think there are things that all footprints can do better. I was just more curious that constant, that intersection of kind of money, trying to keep energy prices down, but also supporting decaying infrastructure. That's going to be a constant conversation. I think it's going to be a hot topic here for the next decade plus. So I just wanted to know where your thoughts were.
You throw in climate change, and you throw in, density, customer density. So just recently, in the past 3 or 4 years, we've started doing strategic undergrounding. Is that something most electric co-ops do?
No.
But there's certain areas where, it really made sense. When you looked at the numbers and you said, we had 75 trees fail here last year, and we had a great looking right of way. But outside of the trees, just, the weather issue is not going to improve. We know that. We've heard from all the experts, and we've got, trees that have grown over the millennia to adapt to different climate conditions. And, is that going to affect reliability? Oh yeah, definitely. When we make recommendations about, just replacing trees that have failed, you look for trees that are 500 miles south of here. Swamp white oak is my personal favorite at the moment. But the other thing I was going to mention when you talked about the carnage is, tree canopy cover is not something you hear utilities talk about too much. But It is really important for energy savings. It's really important for clean air. And it's really important for communities to have canopy cover. And you don't realize until it's gone, like all of the not just ecosystem benefits, but the financial benefits. People tend to spend more in neighborhoods that have tree canopy cover. There tends to be less crime in neighborhoods that have tree canopy cover. The benefits to children and asthma and there's studies that say that girls that can see a tree out their window have fewer eating disorders than those that don't.
That's
So
quite the
there's
correlation.
just a lot to that. And tree planting is normally done by nonprofits in a lot of places now because those budgets have just been slashed in municipal budgets. It doesn't feed anyone necessarily. It doesn't school anyone or help with roads or police or any other the fundamental functions of government, but it is such an important thing to manage.
You're a highly urbanized area, right? Are you doing anything different in low canopied areas? A lot of you municipals you'll see have programs to address or at least to do something in those areas.
We have a few municipalities. What's funny is they tend to be served by the investor owned that surrounds us. If you look at the map of Virginia, it's kind of fingers like this, and anywhere where there's a high density of communities, little municipalities or little towns, they're served by our friends at Dominion usually.
That leads to a question I had, Cindy, which is, the meeting that you guys were part of and helping lead, and given your size as a co-op, and I'm already somewhat aware that you almost act in some ways as mentor to smaller footprints, right? What you're doing, how you're doing it, how you communicate that to your peers, especially your smaller peers, and give them sort of a pathway to kind of try to optimize within their respective budgets. Where do you guys seek mentorship? Like, do the larger utilities like a Dominion, do they influence a lot of what you guys are doing? Like, do you look to them, or are you guys in this kind of weird pocket given you're bigger than the average co-op, but you're small enough that it doesn't really apply what some of those people are doing, some of those utilities are doing, sorry.
I think it is a great mix. We have a relationship with the folks in investor owned, with Dominion, with Pepco, with BG&E, with AEP and First Energy. I know them all. This is a small business. When it comes down to it, very small industry, and we know each other, and some of us have known each other for 30 years, and we talk to each other. And sometimes it's like official at these meetings. Well, what are you doing about this? And how do you communicate this? And sometimes it's just, I'll pick up the phone and I'll say, do you want to do lunch? I really have this thing I want to talk to you about. And so particularly with Dominion, we do that about once a quarter. And with, of course, I have a history at Pepco. So I'm in touch with folks there that have been there since I hired them 20 years ago. And but it is a healthy kind of mix. As far as mentorship, I wouldn't say that we're any smarter about any of this than anybody else. I would say that the co-op model really is set up to share information. Like we're not in competition at all. We want everybody else to win. And we want to do well. We want to do the right things. We want to do them in a sustainable manner. We want to do them efficiently. And so we talk about a lot of things, with the exception of price. We share information freely. And it's kind of a cool way to go about life, like, transparent, and there's no secrets, and just, hey, how did this go? And it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And some of the technology is developing, and some things you try, and they don't work so great. And so,
Yep.
yeah, we all talk pretty frequently. And I'd love to
Good.
give you a great story where, we're, we're kind of
No,
at it. And
I
there's just
figured it was that
isn't.
way. I just didn't know,
Yeah.
like, how much dialogue you're having with some of the bigger players and how much that influences your decision making. But it sounds like it's a combination of informal, formal, and just a good information sharing, in the ecosystem in your general region. So very, very fascinating.
Yeah, quite a bit. And
Yeah.
it's, again, the people in this industry tend to be pretty nice folks.
Yeah. Always. Yeah.
I'm sure there's exceptions, and everybody's got those couple of people that they've ran across over the last 10 years or whatever. But for the most part, the, having this mission of delivering reliable electricity and reducing outages due to trees, it is a mission, right? But it really affects people personally when you can't go in and do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And everybody's had the nasty storms, and maybe not a hurricane, at least in the recent memory, but we all want to help each other. And I don't think that's just a co-op thing. I think it extends to the UAA, who has been phenomenal in bringing folks together, I think.
Yes.
Under Phil's leadership and post that.
Of course. My man, Phil. Well, Cindy, we appreciate the catch up and always like kind of keeping tabs on what you've been up to. And would love to continue to check in on you periodically, on the platform and hear what you're up to. What, before you leave us today, is there anything big that you guys, I mean, obviously you gave us an update on all the things that you've kind of implemented and are working through. Anything else big that you guys have planned over the next 12 months that we can follow up on?
So the satellite data, we got about 1,500 miles worth last year. And
Okay.
I think I told you we're focusing just on that high reliability zone between the substation and the first downline device.
Mm-hmm.
It came kind of late in the year. We're expecting another 1,500 miles any day now. And I'm excited to see how that's going to look and how we're going to use it. Because again, down to that scalpel thing, we're putting it into the hands of people that can really make it actionable. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. It does me no good to sit there at, the 10,000 foot view and go, oh, look at that. And there's this thing over here, until those property owners are talked to. Because, REC doesn't own any trees, and we communicate what we're seeing. And then we maybe look at the tree in person with somebody and explain it in person. That's going to kind of really expand this year and next year. So we'll have a snapshot of our entire system by the end of 25. Okay. And, so I'm excited to see all the different ways we haven't really thought of to use that data yet.
Okay.
There's a lot in there, and a lot of the GIS stuff is getting fixed while they're doing it. And but it's all executed by this amazing team that I work with. I have 7 at the moment. I'll have 8 this time next week. And, they're all certified arborists, all certified drone pilots, and certified utility arborists. And man, they are just at it,
That's great.
Day in and day out. That's great. They're an amazing group. So,
that's great.
Very good.
I have one shameless plug. Can I do that?
Do it. Of course. Always.
Okay. Shameless. I am running for the board of directors for the Utility Arborist Association.
Okay.
And there is an amazing set of folks on the ballot, and any one of them would be fantastic. There's 8 people total running.
It's a big list.
It is a big list. And, anyway, so that's my shameless plug.
That's not a shameless plug. Obviously, I'm glad. First of all, that's great. That's exciting that you're running. I think the board would be it'd be great to have you on there. And you're obviously doing great things, so that's exciting. No, I'm glad you lobbed that out there. Good.
Yeah.
Why not?
No, great. I love it. Well, Cindy, as always, a pleasure sitting with you and chatting with you. Again, you're doing great things. Your team's doing great things. Lovely to see you. Hopefully I'll see you maybe in Fort Worth if you're going to be there. And we can catch up again, but we'll keep doing this, and we'll keep tracking all the great stuff you guys are up to.
Just an FYI, we have trapped Greg Dahl into being a guest here soon, so we'll get him to spill the beans.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah, he might. Thanks, guys. Great to see you both. Ted, stay cool,
thanks,
buddy.
Cindy.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for this episode of Trees and Lines, brought to you by Iapetus Holdings. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. If you have any questions or comments on any of our episodes or ideas for topics or guests, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact us at treesandlines@iapetusllc.com. We'll chat with you soon.